What's going on, everybody? Welcome to What's on My Deck. It's June. We're just wrapping up June, actually. To catch up on things, June's been a big month for me. We've been running around chasing smallmouth. We basically, early June, I got back up here to Mille from a very productive Elite Series, couple offshore events at Lake Fork and Pickwick. But up even through Pickwick, I still had not caught my first smallmouth bass of the season. And as soon as I got home, I literally got that taken care of right away. But it's been some hardcore guiding going on. And then now I'm just getting things ready and ramped up to hit the road again for the northern swing of the Bassmaster Elite. It's going to be a lot of smallmouth fishing for me. We're talking Lake Ontario, the St. Lawrence River, and then Lake Oahe, and maybe even a little bit over at La Crosse on the Mississippi River. But this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk smallmouth. Everybody wants to know. So many people are hitting me up wanting to know what baits we're using. We're having awesome guide trips, literally putting people on their PBs, out of town folks coming up here to northern Minnesota, getting out on Mille, using some awesome equipment, and I'm going to show you everything that we've been using to put good folks on big bags. What I'm going to do for June is I'm going to show everybody. I'm going to kind of do a little shield special here. We're going to hit mid-range rods, stuff that I've been using for a lot of guide trips. Now this isn't you know, your bottom of the middle stuff. This is still very, very good stuff, but at the same time at a more friendly price point, and I think will help a lot of my fan base that's asking me, you know, some different alternatives outside of using, you know, the NRX Plus and the XSense Reel. Next month, it's going to be all my stuff. What I'm using out there at St. Lawrence and at Oahe and back here on Lake Mille and my equipment that we're going to rock for July. So that'll be the next one coming up, and let's dive right into it. This is the nuts and bolts of what we've been catching them on out here on Lake Mille, and I'll explain a little bit what we're doing. Basically, I got here for the start of the spawn and the post spawn. I'm going to exclude a lot of the spawn stuff. I throw like a white, you know, ExoNed, something like that at them. I do have a drop shot bait that I'm also kind of doubling up as a bed bait. Still, if I find, you know, your random legger, but a lot of it for me was pre-spawn and post-spawn. That's stuff that I like to really dial myself into this time of year, and so that's what we're going to get into. Now we're definitely more post-spawn. When I first got here in June or early June, I had a lot of opportunity on some pre-spawners. First and foremost, a swim bait. Swim baits are huge. Basically, this is just, you know, the 2022 version of a grub. I've thrown a BioSpawn ExoSwimmer. This is the little guy right here, 3.25 inch. It's perfect for tossing around on Lake Mille. Right now the forage is small. They're keening on little perch, they're keening on little crawdads, all that. So I really love this color right here, and I'm throwing it on a little 1/4 ounce Outkast tackle Goldeneye Swimmerhead. This is the Swimmerhead that I helped design. It comes through the rock scrape, but this time of year there's a lot of that muck on the rocks, a lot of that moss and stuff growing, that algae. So I'm actually swimming this up a little higher. I started the season with the 1/8 ounce. Now getting more post spawn towards the end of June, I'm throwing a 1/4 ounce. I can kind of cover the middle range. I'm not fishing too deep. At the same time, I can fish up shallow, but also hit that middle 8 to 10 to 12 foot range really good, and really depend on the ExoSwimmer here. It's got a hard kick. That's why I like this bait so much. For smallmouth, it's got a real hard kick, tight little wobble to it. Awesome bait for catching big ones. My setup for this is a Loomis IMX Pro. It's an 852S jig worm rod. Been using this rod a lot when I'm guiding. It does a lot. It's a do-all rod. So many people come out, they catch their PB, they have one of their best day of smallmouth fishing they've ever had in their life. They go back home, they buy this rod just because of that. It does do everything. I'm throwing this thing on a Shimano Stradic. This particular one's a 2500. I'm using 10-pound Power Pro braided line to a 10-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon leader. So that's my setup. That's number one. Gotta throw a swimmer when you're fishing for smallmouth bass. Up next, the Ned Rig. The Ned Rig straight wax them. It's something that I use all the time out here. My setup, again, same exact rod. I'm telling you, this is a great all-around rod. It's the Loomis the IMX Pro 852S jig worm rod. Again, I'm throwing on another Shimano Stradic 2500. I'm using 10-pound Power Pro SSV2 this time to a 10-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon leader, and my main bait right here is a 3/16 Outkast tackle perfect Ned head. Again, that's my bait. You're not going to find a better Ned head on the market. I really urge you to try. The Ned Rig is a get bit bait. No matter whose you throw, you're going to get them, but you will lose them, and you'll get more bites on this one. It's just the way we design the head. And right now I'm using this brand new BioSpawn ExoNed. It's been a good bait. In all honesty, last year and years leading up, if it wasn't this, it'd be a 10,000 fish Sakoshi bug. Both of them cross style Ned Rigs. You know, both have that same type of, where it stretches, the plastic, that Stretch X style plastic, and at the same time that perfect Ned head just plucks them right here. Because this bait's a little longer, I can use either the 1/0 or 2/0, and it's just a great bait. Again, if I wasn't throwing this one, which I threw a ton in white when we were bed fishing, I'd throw that one, the same exact ExoNed in white. Just switched over now that we're going for post spawners. Green pumpkin does the trick, but I do definitely still like to use the 10,000 fish Sakoshi bug. It's a great bait, and it catches them, especially when we're talking about crawdad eaters like the ones we have here on Lake Mille. Let's talk about the drop shot right here. I'm using a Loomis GLX 822S drop shot rod. This is my more offshore, a little bit deeper rod. I am using it still a little bit if we see one on a deep bed or something like that. I'm using a Shimano Vanford 3000, awesome reel. Everyone who uses this setup really enjoys it. I'm using 10-pound Power Pro SSV2, 10-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon leader, a number 2 owner mosquito hook, and a 3/8 ounce Wu tungsten drop shot cylinder weight. For the bait right here, I'm just using a Strike King half shell. Honestly, I got about a half dozen drop shot baits that I rotate through to figure out what they're biting on that day. One key thing I want to talk about, this drop shot is great for weary fish coming off the spawn, they're post spawn. They don't really want to bite, maybe from target fishing, boulders, stuff like that. Again, coming across bedding baits. And then there's just an abundance of perch and little crawdads right now, a ton of them in the water column. So it's just a pared down little bait. They don't exactly know what it is, but it looks like a lot of what they're eating. One thing I do with all my soft plastics, I just want to point out, is whether it's the ExoNed here or the half shell like this, is I put bait fuel with them. This is something that I got with bait fuel early. I actually never even got with them. I started using it because I was hearing all the roar before the Bassmaster Classic about the bait. I started putting on my stuff. I instantly noticed that I was getting bit. We were cashing some checks. We're doing good. We're whacking them on Lake Mille. It's in my head now. I like to use the stuff. It just seems to get bit. There's a lot of stuff to it. There's a little link here that you can use, the code right here, to get the dirty on what it all is. But at the same time, I just put a little bit in the packages and then let them sit in my day box. Like I said, I rotate through the different baits that I need. But one thing that's always familiar is that I'm putting bait fuel on all my soft plastics now. It's just in my brain. I want to get bit, and I like the bait fuel. So that's something that I'm going to put on them. One that we're always wrecking them on is a tube. I've never met a smallmouth that won't eat a tube. It's just what they do. They eat crawdads, perch, whatever, and the tube resembles that great. This is a Get Bit Baits tube. Dan Elsner out in Get Bit Baits out in Wisconsin has always made me this thing. It's like 2.5, 2 3/4. It's a small little guy, and I match it with his tube jig head. This one right here is 1/4 ounce. Again, I think I'm using that same rod. Oh no, this is actually the 6/8 Loomis IMX Pro, the 803S jig worm rod. This is a stout sticker. I've always liked this from the old NRX series. The 803 for jig worming, tubing, a little shorter rod, but it is stout and it sticks them hard. I'm using again a Shimano Stradic 2500 HG, 10-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon to 10-pound Power Pro SSV2. Tube is just one of those things, you know, it's not as trendy as it used to be. The Ned Rig's a little more trendy. There's other things out there, but a tube day in and day out just gets bit by both largemouth and smallmouth. But it's something that I will always have on my deck, whether I have a 16th ounce tube jig head or a 1/2 ounce or 3/4 ounce tube jig head. That's just dependent on how deep I'm fishing, but at the same time, a tube is something that I am definitely always going to throw. I'm a smallmouth head, and I learned how to catch them on a tube. And that right there is one of the best. All right, up next, the Marabou Hair Jig, the Fluff, the Fly. Outkast Tackle Fighter Fly. That's the one I'm throwing right here. This one happens to be in brown, sometimes in black, sometimes in green. That's just depending on where you're throwing it and what the forage is, whether it's mayflies, other bugs, whether they're zeroing in on leeches or maybe little tiny crawdads that are just hatching. The setup is super important. We're using a Loomis IMX Pro 901S SJR. It's a 7/6 medium light action rod. Why? One, for casting. This thing is tiny. It's a 3/32 ounce, something really small. I'm expecting it to throw it a long way, and I want to keep weary fish in this clear water away from me. That's why. And then at the same time, when they bite it, I don't want to ever pull them hooks out, but I'll land almost every single one of them with this setup. Again, I'm using a Shimano Stradic. This one happens to be a 3000. I'm using 8-pound regular Power Pro. It just casts a little further, the regular stuff, and I'm using a little bit shorter of a leader than I generally would tend to, and running an 8-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon. But from the pre-spawn through the mayfly hatch, while bass are shallow on these glacial lakes, the Outkast tackle fighter fly will definitely put them in the boat, and it's one that I generally keep glued to my hand. Next up, a Wacky Worm, whether it's a Wacky Cinco or in this case an Exo Stick. You know, I'm using one of those little VMC rings. I kind of like them. It holds it on real good. A little owner mosquito hook. I'm using a little Loomis GLX 842S SJR rod. This is a super sweet little rod. Really a fan of this GCX series. I'm trying to get more. I do have some you'll see here in the lineup, but just an awesome rod. I love throwing this thing around. Again, we're using this maybe to pay off some shallow smallies, definitely ones that hit my top water and miss, stuff like that, or even a weary high flyer that I see in the active target or something like that. I can throw this at them. I'm using the Shimano Vanford 3000 10-pound Power Pro braided line to a 8 or 10-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon leader. This time of year, post-spawn, and catch largemouth too, even on these big glacial lakes. Mess around, catch a 4-pounder one day out there. This is just a great setup to throw at fish. And again, this GCX series is one you're going to hear me talking about a lot more as we approach further into the season. Next up, I'm throwing the Shimano World Pop. This is the 69F. You can see right here, it's got that flash technology inside of it, that flash boost. Super important in this clear water. Awesome bait. It walks viciously across the top of the water. I can pop it, and then of course I can let it sit there and let a weary smallmouth come up and grab it. Really a great bait around the mayfly hatch, and when there's a lot of perch in the water, when the smallmouths are looking up. My setup for this is, again, another GCX rod. It's a spinnerbait rod. I just like it because it's short and it's easy to pop. It's the Loomis GCX 812C spinnerbait rod, SBR. It's 6'9", medium action, and I'm throwing the new Shimano Curado 70 HG MGL reel. You've heard me always preach MGL. I can't stop now. Loving these new Curados that have the MGL spool in them. I'm a diehard, even the Bantam MGL. I love the MGL spool. I'm able to cast it a super duper long way, and this little tiny reel right here is just a super fun one to throw at post-spawn smallmouth. Definitely got to have a top water from here on through the end of the year when you're talking about smallmouth bass. All right, we got another little GCX rod right here on a little drop shot. And this is a light one. I'm throwing a little 1/8 ounce Woo Tungsten. Again, a little owner mosquito hook. I'm throwing a little Megabass Hazadong, however you say it. It's just a good little smally bait on a drop shot. I can throw this at ones that I'm seeing up shallow that are scooting around post-spawn, maybe even some pre-spawn coming in. Just weary bass, and definitely the ones that are around like the cabbage clumps. Something that we're starting to see more on Mille, a little bit of milfoil, a little bit of cabbage, and it's definitely holding some big smallmouth bass. And this is something that I like to throw off the weed patches and just kind of pull off. I'm using a Shimano. Again, this is the new Noski right here, actually, the 3000 Noski. Awesome little spinning reel. Just got it. Clients seem to love it. 10-pound Power Pro braided line to an 8-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon leader. And again, this little GCX is bad to the bone. It's the 820S DSR rod. It's a 0 power. It is so fun. The clients love it. It's just a wonder to whip this little light drop shot around. It doubles up as a hair jig if we need another hair jig in the boat. And even later in the year when we get out deep, I'm going to have them use this thing because it bows them up, it keeps them on, and the guide clients absolutely love it because 4-pounders feel like about 8-pounders when they're reeling it in on this setup. Super light. Again, I can't say enough about this GCX series. I know you can find them at Shields. I think you should because this is an awesome Loomis rod at a very, very affordable price point. Last but not least, we got another Loomis IMX Pro, and I'm throwing it like a little Demiki rig here. Moping, whatever it is. Basically, my buddy Jeff Gustafson, Gussie on the Elites, is very, very fond of this, very good at it. He cashes a lot of checks doing it. He's not afraid to tell people that. And at the same time, I'm trying to get better and better about it. I respect his game a lot. I know it'll help me if I can figure it out. This has kind of been a guide rod. I've kind of kept this one around me. I throw it at some random fish when I see them. Just trying to, you know, whether I'm dropping vertically on it or I'm casting to them. It's just something that I personally am trying to get a lot better at. I'm using another Loomis IMX Pro. This is the 842S SJR, 7-foot medium action, Shimano Stradic, 2500 HG, 10-pound Power Pro SSV2, 8-pound Seaguar Invizx Fluorocarbon, kind of a finesse setup, and I'm using the 3/8 ounce Goldeneye with the 3/0 hook. When this is just a little Z-Man minnow, it's a good one because it's kind of buoyant, and that's kind of like why I like it. And again, Gussie's a Z-Man guy, and that's what he uses, so I'm just giving credit where credit's due. I wouldn't have this one put together if it wasn't for him, and trying to get better at it. So that is my last one. This is the setup that I throw. Haven't had a ton of luck on it yet. I'm not that good at it, or maybe my fish here just ain't into it, but at the same time, always striving to be better. And these are my rod setups. This is June. This is what we're whacking them on Lake Mille, smallmouth fishing around the clock. If you're interested in a guide trip and you're not from the state of Minnesota, I specialize in just out-of-state trips only. Please contact me at josh@joshdouglasfishing.com. You can go to joshdouglasfishing.com, my website, check out what I offer, and definitely let's try to get you on the books for the 2023 season. Tune in, we got a lot of big stuff coming up. We're getting ready to head to New York. Got to have some big events. We're sitting so close to the classic cut line. Smallies are my thing. Don't know the lakes that well, so I just got to depend on what I know. And I'm going to put it to the test, and we'll meet right back here on What's on My Deck in July. We'll bust out the big guns, my rod and reels, my everydays, and we'll break it down. Until next time, tight lines.